morning, boys and girls. It's time for science, and we are going to do our first checkpoint one on our science project. So the first thing we're going to do is you're going to watch the sink or float video. I'm going to play it for you so you can just watch it through this video. Um, so watch what happens, and then I'll show you how to complete the checkpoint.
Have you ever tossed some sticks into a pond? Or maybe you like to bring a bunch of toys into the tub? Either way, you've probably found that not all objects act the same when they're in the water. Some things sink right to the bottom, while other things float on the top. Why does that happen? Well, I brought some friends to see if we can figure that out.
Hi, everyone. My name's Webb,
And hi, I'm his sister Bill. Since we live in a pond, we see a lot of things sink.
and a lot of things float.
I bet! You know, you can actually learn a lot about something by seeing what it does in the water. So I'd say this calls for an experiment. First, we'll need a pretty big container of water. We'll fill it about 3/4 full and set it up where it's okay if some splashes out. Now we need some stuff to put in the water.
All kinds of different stuff.
We're gonna look for a couple things around the fort that are okay to get wet. If you want to try this experiment at home, make sure you ask before you put anything from your house into the water. Let's see what we found. All right, Squeaks found a penny. I found a stick, and Bill and Webb, they found 2 different spoons, a metal one and a plastic one. Good job, guys! Now, before we get started, let's take a closer look at what we'll be testing. All of these things are made out of different materials, like metal, plastic, and wood. Some of them are pretty small, and some are a little bit bigger. I think we have a pretty good group of objects because they're all pretty different. Now, before we start putting things in the water, let's guess whether each one will sink or float. And let's keep track of our guesses. But how will we... Great idea, Squeaks. We'll use a chart. All right, let's start with the stick. Bill, Webb, what do you think? Will it sink or float?
Quack,
Quack, quack, quack, quack, quack, quack, quack, quack.
Well, I can tell you guys are pretty excited. Tell us what you're thinking.
Well, in the pond where we live, I've never seen sticks that have sunk. Only ones that float.
Well, that's because you haven't seen the ones that have sunk.
Well, that's because they all float, Webb.
Okay, fine. Put me and Bill down for the stick floats.
Okay, here we go. And it floats. Good job, you two.
Yay!
Next, let's try the metal spoon. What do you think? Will it sink or float?
Well, I've never seen a spoon float.
Me neither.
Quack?
Quack, quack, quack. We think it'll sink.
Okay, let's see. It sinks.
Yeah, we're the smartest ducks in the world.
Yeah.
Now, what about the plastic spoon? Do you think it will sink or float?
Quack, quack,
Quack.
quack,
Quack, quack.
quack, quack. Well, it's the same shape as the other spoon.
Yeah, and we think it might sink, just like the metal spoon did.
Okay, let's see. It floats.
Oh,
Bummer.
Well, that's okay, guys. That's how we learn, right?
Yeah, I guess. It's just weird. The other spoon sank.
Well, let's record our results and see if we can find out why it sank after we test our next object. Our next object will be the penny. Do you think it will sink or float?
Well, a penny feels a lot like a metal spoon, so I think it'll sink.
All right. And Webb, what do you think?
well, it's so light, but kind of small, and I don't usually see things that small floating. I'll have to agree with my sister this time. It's gonna sink.
It sinks! Good job!
Whoa!
Now that we've tested all of our objects, let's look at our chart. Some of the objects floated and some of them sank. Let's see. The metal spoon and the penny sank. The plastic spoon and the stick floated. Is there anything that's the same about the things that floated and the things that sank?
Well, we know that the metal thing sank, and the metal spoon feels kind of heavy.
But so does the stick, and the stick floated while the spoon sank, so maybe it's not all about how much something weighs or its shape?
You're right, and that might help us explain why some things float and some things sink. The answer has to do with something called density. Everything, and I mean everything, is made of tiny particles that we can't see. And how dense an object is depends on how much space is between those particles.
Particles?
Jesse, what the quack is a particle?
Now that's an awesome question. Let's use our imaginations and pretend that particles are marbles. We'll start with a bunch of marbles on a table. If you had the marbles all right next to each other, That's kind of how the particles would look inside an object that's dense, like the metal spoon. But if those marbles were spaced really far apart, that'd be more like what the particles are like in something that's less dense, like the plastic spoon. The metal spoon is more dense than the plastic spoon. It's about the same size and shape, but the particles that make it up are closer together than the particles that make up the plastic one. But remember, everything has density, including water.
What?
It's true! Since water has its own density, if something is more dense than the water it's in, it'll sink. The metal spoon and the penny were more dense than the water, so they sank. And the stick and the plastic spoon were less dense than the water, so they floated. So will it sink or will it float? It depends, in part, on density. How did your experiment go?
Did you make some wrong guesses like us?
I bet you got some right.
Let us know what you use in your experiment and how it turns out. Just get help from a grown-up and leave us a note in the comments below. Or send us a picture at kids@thescishow.com. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, so that was the video. And now you're going to be able to use that video to complete your checkpoint. And let me show you how to get to your checkpoint, because this is in Summit Learning. So you're going to open your Summit Learning. You're going to go to your year view. Click that. Scroll down till you find science. And we're working on projects. And this is investigation project part 1. So you're going to click on that. And in the project overview, which is what will come up, click on Practice Lab, Sink or Float. So if you'll click on that, and then if you will click on this Practice Lab, Sink or Float, and it has a little like piece of paper thing icon beside it, and it's got a link, so click on that. And that will bring open the lab report, which is what you'll be doing for your checkpoint. So we're going to be the cog skills we're addressing are asking questions, predicting, hypothesizing, and planning and carrying out an investigation. So we have already completed the lab. So you need to I want you to write a question about sink or float that includes the 4 tested objects. Then write a hypothesis. The hypothesis is an if-then statement. If I do this, then this is what will happen. If I put, if I put, if I forget to give my dog some food, then my dog will go hungry. Okay, so your hypothesis is, but it has to pertain to the lab. And you're using one of these things that they used in the lab. So try to think of something that is an if then statement about what you think about your question that's going to happen. So you have a question, and then your hypothesis is how you're going to test it. Okay, so here's the materials. They're already there for you. You don't have to do anything there. Procedure, this was already in here for you, so you don't have to fill anything out there. You can read over it because that's something that would be in a project. Now, part 2, you're going to complete the table as you work through the investigation. But so we've already seen the video. If you need to watch it again, just back this video up and watch it again. But so here we have the objects listed that they tested. You're going to put a check mark if they sank or if they float. So whichever one they did, you're going to put a check mark in that box. So then for the conclusion, you're going to think about the 4 objects you tested. 2 objects had the same size and shape, but one may have floated while one sank. Why do you think that could be? So what you're going to write in this part is explain which 2 objects were the same but had different results and provide a reason for why that would have happened. Okay, now the way that you're going to write in this document is by clicking this text right there, and then you can simply type on it. And you're going to do that for the parts that you need to fill out. And then when you're finished with it, this is how you're going to turn it in. This is so easy. You're going to request feedback, okay? And that lets me know that you are finished with your lab and your lab report. And so I can go in and look at your checkpoint, and I can give you feedback on it. So if you did everything right, I'm going to give you a green, and that means you're good to go. Keep moving. If I if there's some things wrong, then if several things, you're probably going to get a yellow. If everything is pretty much not not right, or if it's parts are not completed, or if none of it is completed, then you will get a red feedback, and that will show up on your year view for a different color, just the way that on a year view, you see this student has finished the onboarding project. He did really well, so he has a green on it. He did our Texas and the geography, so those turned to green. So the colors of your power focus areas, your projects, and your math units will turn to the color that you are getting your feedback or your final product for. Okay, so you'll be getting a checkpoint um, grade today that will go in, and you can see how you are doing. So have fun, and I'll see you later.